Hi y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today we're going to be talking about conservation of detail. A lot of people, when they're world building, they build too much. They build a world too large for their story to touch every facet of the world. So I'm going to go through some of the pros and cons, mostly cons, of doing that. Let's move back to our campaign tripod, what everything is built upon: the setting, the story, and the team. Now, the first one is probably going to be the story. What's the story that you're telling? Who, and then the team comes second. Who are the key players? Who can tell this story? Who can experience this whole story? The last thing is going to be the setting. Where does this take place? How big does the setting need to be to tell this story? How much of this setting is the team going to move through? Because I see a lot of people building their world, and it's like you've built, 5 continents. Each one has 10 countries on it. And I'm just thinking to myself, what kind of story is going to take the characters through 50 different countries? How long is that going to take? To me, that should take at least 50 sessions. If you spend one session in each of these countries, it'll take you 50 sessions to touch it all. So in all likelihood, your story doesn't require that much. Your team won't be traveling to all these areas. So you have wasted your own time, effort, and energy on this setting. And I don't want you to waste your time. I want you to maximize your time. That's what this channel is all about. It's not playing the game, it's playing the game to an excellent degree, to be as efficient as possible in planning, in executing, in following up. And efficiency means conservation of detail. What do you need to worry about? What do you not need to worry about? So if you start with your story and your team, that will tell you how much of a setting you actually need. If it's space opera, you might need a huge setting, multiple planets, multiple cultures. If it's gangsters, the gangs of New York, you might only need one city. Other elements can help for subtext and context. Knowing that Ireland exists somewhere can help you make this Irish gang in the gangs of New York. But you don't need to know much about Ireland. You can be very sketchy with those details. So save your own time. Think about the other elements. Think about your main goal. What's actually going to appear on screen. Flesh that out. Anything that's not going to be on screen, you don't need to flesh it out. So, I mean, that's like my first part right there. Save your time. Be efficient. Think about the story, think about the team before you think about the setting, while you're building the setting. So all of that is about why you can save yourself time and why you should save yourself time, because you value the time in your own life. You have a limited amount of time. And the second part is you only have a limited amount of time at the table to play the game. Not everyone can run a game for 30 years straight. I wouldn't want to. I run a game every year, and I'm very happy doing about 50 episodes per campaign, because that allows me to explore different rule sets every year, different genres every year. We've done medieval Europe, we've done the Arabian desert, and now we're doing a space western on a water planet. 3 years, 3 campaigns, 3 rule sets, 3 genres, no overlap. And I'm not sure if I've done a video on kitchen sinks about overlap or not, but I certainly will if I have not yet. But in addition to not wanting to water down your other campaigns with kitchen sinks, you always want to make sure each campaign is as distinct and unique and individual as each other, from one another as possible. So with conservation of detail, you want that distinct thumbprint, that signature on each campaign. Conservation of detail will help you do that What are the things I need to get across for my genre? What are the things that would dilute my genre? Get rid of those. Conserve your detail. Conserve your focus. So that's one thing, is the experience of moving through. If I have minotaurs and satyrs and centaurs really focusing on that Greco-Roman style, if suddenly an elf shows up, I've diluted everything. You know, it's not this tight Greco-Roman setting anymore. Now it's mostly Greco-Roman with some Norse elements or some Tolkien pop culture elements mixed in. And maybe you want to do that, but very likely I don't think that you do. I think you want every campaign to be unique and different and have its own thumbprint, so that you can have your own thumbprint as a GM and not blur into the memory of other GMs. You want to stand out. You want to be the best. That's why you're on my channel. If that's not what you want, you're not going to enjoy my videos, or probably won't. So that's one thing. The other thing is just in the execution. Just like in your day-to-day life, you have a finite number of hours in the day to do your planning, and you want to save them. At the table, you've got a finite amount of time. You can't all run a campaign that runs for 30 years, for 10 years, for 5 years, for 1 year. Some people have trouble getting the same group of 7 people together for 52 weeks in a row, especially if you're playing with adults. You got kids, you got education, you got work, you might have to move, you have religious holidays, you have all kinds of things that can interfere with your game. So you want to get the game as tight and compact as possible. All killer, no filler. You want to conserve the detail. Don't waste your time. If I only have 10 sessions at the table, then I don't have time for a lot of side quests and subplots. And even though you probably have more than 10 sessions, you might not have 50, or you might not even have 25, depending on where you are. Or if you have 50, you might not have 500. So if you really tighten it up, conserve the detail on the road, and say, okay, we've got 50 sessions. That's time to explore maybe 5 different cultures. So, you know, Cyclops, Minotaurs, Satyrs, Gorgons, and humans. And we're not going to include anything else because there's no time. We're only at 50 sessions. I'm counting on this lasting a year. That might be a lot. It might not be a lot depending on who you are. Plan for your own timetable. But for me, a year is great. Usually I can keep people together for a year, but I don't have time to explore 50 cultures because that would be 1 episode for each. And that's just not enough for the detail that I want. And again, because I'm running a different campaign next year, I want them to be different and distinct from each other. So plan ahead, conserve the detail. Don't put something in the world unless you know you can explore it, because it's diluting everything. It's confusing the main issue. If you're making your world and you have orcs, bugbears, goblins, flinds, trolls, ogres, wolfren, if you have all these races that are the same thing, that are all, I'm a generic barbarian, I fight and kill and raid and pillage and rape and steal, and I don't farm or lumberjack or any of that. If you've got 10 races that fulfill the same role in the story, you don't need 10 races. You need 1 race for each role in the story. That way each one is tighter. It's you have more time to explore each one because there's fewer of them to explore. So you probably don't need both orcs and bugbears if they're going to be so similar to one another that they just dilute each other. You'd rather tighten it up, have the one that's twice as good, twice as much time. You can spend twice as long working on that culture. And it makes your campaign twice as distinct from the next guy's campaign and from your next campaign. So by trying to conserve the detail, you're trying to save yourself a headache. You're putting your brand on it. But also, if a catastrophe occurs, If one of your players say, I got to move, I've got this job opportunity in real life, and I'm not going to be here for 50 sessions. If you've been going at it hard for 25 sessions at that point, you've not wasted your time with subplots, side quests, then you can say, well, I'm far enough in the story. Maybe I'm to one of my blow-off points, one of the endings I built in. And I can end it halfway because I planned for that. And I did a video on that as well, the blow-off points, why you should plan for misfortune and be ready to end the game at several different points. So you can check that video out as well. But by keeping it tighter, I'd much rather run 2 10-session campaigns rather than one 20-session campaign. Because I can explore more, and I know I will have an ending for one. There's nothing worse than having no ending in the campaign, or no ending to a character's story arc. And conservation of detail helps you shorten the whole campaign down. And that can be a very good thing because you get the ending, you get catharsis. And probably the last thing that I wanted to discuss is when the players are designing their character, not every character will be interesting for 50 full sessions. They just won't be. Some will, and those characters will be wasted on a 10-session campaign. But some characters will only be interesting for 10 sessions. And trying to extend the life of that character for 50 sessions could be very, very boring to the player, to the other players, to the GM. So again, that's why conservation of detail is important. To put your timeline on it, to not drag things out, to not dilute things, to keep everything focused. And I think this video might not be the most focused that I've ever done, which is why I haven't done it until now. It's kind of a hard concept for me to put into words. But I think my ramble is complete. I want you to let me know in the comments below, what do you think of conservation of detail? How do you achieve it? How do you plan ahead? What do you think of this video? Is there a better way I could phrase this video? And please do a video response. I welcome such, and maybe I can inspire you to a different idea and you can state it better than I just have. But again, I won't waste any of your time. I'll conserve my detail in the video as much as possible. And until I see you again, good day and good gaming.